Welcome back, everyone, to the Charismatic Voice. I am here with Alissa White-Gluz. First thing, I know we're going to talk about tea or coffee, but I just want to talk about your name and how appreciative we are to have you here. So can you say your name for everyone?
I mean, you said it perfectly, Elizabeth. It's Alissa White-Gluz. So, but I mean, you know what? I've heard many different variations of that, and I'm pretty much anything that kind of, is similar, I respond to at this point. So thank you for pronouncing it properly, even though it's all the same to me.
Well, thank you so much for taking time. And I hugely appreciate it because you have so many things going on. It's insane. So, wow. Thank you for just scoping out some time in your schedule to do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And same to you. I know you have a lot going on too, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, okay, now we can talk about tea and coffee. So, do you have a preference of tea or coffee, and what are you drinking today?
Okay, well, today I am drinking a vegan Monster protein shake, and this is product placement. I apologize because this is actually my boyfriend's protein company.
Whoa!
But I actually do drink this all the time. So, it's really hot today. I love tea and I love coffee, but it's pretty warm, so I've decided to allow myself to have a protein shake instead. It actually just started pouring rain, which I love. I love storms. Yes. It's so nice. So maybe it'll cool down a little bit, but right now I'm just having like a cold protein shake. And what are you having?
Well, I'm having some Earl Grey tea and
my favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's awesome. Yeah, and I have product placement as well. We have our Use Your Singing Hole mug.
That's awesome. Good. I mean, you know what?
Product placement.
Exactly.
Amazing. I feel like mugs and just drinking cavities are very nice to have products on.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, awesome. I love I think more than the actual like flavor or effect of tea or coffee, I love just the feeling and the ritual of having a warm mug and just being cozy with it, especially when it's like pouring rain like right now. So maybe I should have gone for tea, but
no, I feel like sometimes you need a little bit of energy to make it through a long interview.
Yes.
Great. Well, let's kind of go into where you came from first. Mm-hmm. You're from Montreal, right? Canada?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Born still there, all the good stuff?
I was born and raised in Montreal, and to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time in Montreal because I'm usually elsewhere working, which is great. I guess I technically live in Montreal still, but I try to avoid it as much as possible, to be honest, just because I like to be doing stuff and out there working, and I have like serious FOMO. So I'm always trying to like just be out there getting everything done and seeing this and doing that. So I don't stay still for very long, but yeah.
I relate to that because when I was touring and singing opera all the time, it was like, well, I have a home address in a city. I go back there sometimes, but
exactly.
I spent much more time in other cities than I did in my quote home city.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. It's still good to have a home base though. At least you can get mail somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's good for that. I have like a ton of family and friends here. So I still appreciate it, but I feel like I don't know where home is actually, to be honest. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. The stage, the tour bus, I don't know.
That's a really good point too, especially because your band is mostly centered in Europe. And I know you got stuck in Europe recently for a long time. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a good point. I feel that as a traveling artist, sometimes you don't know where home is anymore.
Yeah, I think the idea of home is like a very confusing one. And actually that's what I wrote House of Mirrors about in a way. Yeah, I just find it like a very confusing topic because I feel like home is more like an experience than an actual physical location. So to me, like I only feel at home if I'm around the right people, you know what I mean? And So I think I'm pretty adaptable. And I think human beings in general are pretty adaptable in that sense. Like we can make ourselves at home in a lot of different situations.
I think you're right. I'm going to make a first cheers there to home because that was really, really well said and thoughtful.
Cheers.
Cheers to home, wherever it may be.
Screenshot. No.
Amazing. Okay. You were born and grew up in a family that seems, from what I've read about you, to have had some musical background, or at least upbringing, because I know that one of your sisters is also in a band. So can you talk a little bit about what that musical life was kind of early on? And did you sing with your sister? Did you sing at home very much? Did you make all kinds of scary sounds and terrify your parents?
Yes to all of the above. Yeah, I mean, my older sister, Jasmine, I mean, she's not that much older. She's 3 years older. She is the kind of brain and brawn behind No Joy. And she had a few different bands that she was doing. I mean, she's a very inspiring person, even though we have completely different tastes in music. We have completely differing, like, she gets music of all kinds. And I thought I got music of all kinds until I started talking about it more with her. And like, for example, for her, the most important thing is production and like uniqueness of sound and the gear that it's built on and analog this and that, which is super cool. But like, for her, lyrics aren't even really an important thing. And for me, lyrics are like one of the most important things. So it's really interesting to have someone that is, you know, literally my family member by blood, who has an equal appreciation for music, but actually a completely different taste. And so, so yeah, she's great. I mean, she plays guitar and writes everything with No Joy, which also Tara McLeod, who is from the band Kitty, also plays with her.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and they tour all over the place too. They tour everywhere. And she started touring. I mean, she was really like getting on a Greyhound bus alone with a drum machine and a guitar on her back and taking it around to the States and then around Canada. And she really, you know, she really like did it from the ground up. And I really respect that. And
I do too.
yeah. And so, yeah, we grew up really liking to entertain, my sister and I. So, but I think just creative in general. And I feel very lucky that I was able to have like a partner in crime to do that with, because, you know, our favorite toy was a VHS camcorder. And so we would, you know, make claymations with that, you know, so like push start and then push stop really quickly to get just like as few frames as possible, and then move your little sculpture a little bit and then start stop. We would make full on claymation videos like that. We would make cartoons drawing on a piece of paper. We would do fashion shows and film it. We like, and we still have these VHS tapes too, which is super funny to watch. But we grew up having access to that and like little microphone things and a little drum set. And so it was, for us, having fun was like making stuff and then showing it off. So, and I think it still is. That is still what we like to do. So I'm really, I feel very fortunate to have grown up the way I did.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love that you had an outlet for your creativity that also was technical, because it's so difficult, I think, for artists these days. A lot of artists think, oh, I'm just going to focus on the music. And if they don't focus on the technical side too, it's really hard to get somewhere now.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because everyone is so dependent on our phones now. Like we're so used to having our phones around. And just recently in Canada, there was like a nationwide outage of one of the major telecommunications companies. And so nobody had phone service for like 4 days. Nobody had phone service, internet service. Yeah, like nothing. Like you couldn't call 911. You couldn't make a call. You couldn't send a text. And I was like using a map at the point when it went down. And all of a sudden I was driving in traffic and I was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where I'm going. And it just brought me back to like the early days of touring when, well, we didn't have smartphones back then, and how did we do it? And somehow we survived, but now it feels like we're so dependent on technology, and it's made life so convenient that we can't even imagine not having it. And I think the same goes for musicians, actually. And I remember I used to write songs just like with a pen and paper, and like, okay, this word is going to be A flat, and then slide, I'd make like a line, like slide up into the B, and then we're going to go over here, and this is going to be, and I'd had my own form of notation to remember what my ideas were, because I didn't have anything to even record the ideas on. But now,
that's so cool.
Yeah, and I still have the books with those notations, and I still understand what I was trying to tell myself, which is cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, because I mean, I can't really read music. Like I can read a sheet of music, but it will be slow. Like I will be like, that is a ding. Okay, that's that one. Ding. Like I can't sight read it at all. Like I'm not fluent. So for me, it was much easier to just make up my own little code that I wrote above the lyrics. And then I would write, after a line, like wait 4 bars, scream this, like I just basically structured the song and the melodies and the rhythms around the lyrics. And I still do that now, but the easier thing now is that when I have an idea, I can just hop in and record the idea in rather good quality. And then if I like the idea, I can record it in professional quality. And I think that that's something that it's like a double-edged sword, because it gives people the ability to self-engineer, which is fantastic, because I think you can actually hear your idea and be like, oh, well, wait, maybe that's not sounding exactly how I thought it was going to sound, and I should modify it. But it also gives people maybe too many options. So now it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll adjust that a bit, and maybe I'll actually change that a little bit. And you can actually kind of tread water on a song if you don't just like make some decisions and get the song done.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Or you can lose the humanness of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just like a lovely childhood, and you were singing music that your parents approved of at first, and then at some point you started, doing some crazy growls as well. What was it like when your mother first overheard, or your father first overheard, demon sounds coming from their child?
I mean, they heard that the second I was born. So. Actually, no, it's funny because my parents obviously know what I sound like, and they say that my death metal vocal sounds more like me than the clean voice. So with the pretty voice, they're like, that ain't you. But with the death metal voice, they're like, that's the girl I know.
Oh my goodness.
But actually, I was a super shy kid, like really shy, really in my head a lot. But but the thing is, like, my parents are, they're open to all kinds of music. And my sister also, like I said, she was my older sister by just a little bit. So when she started discovering punk and grunge, like, we were like between 5 and 10 years old in the early 90s. So for us, that was a really cool time with all these grunge bands coming out, and like the Seattle Revolution, and just like this dirty, messy kind of style of rock music. And I actually still love that, and my sister loves that too. And so I think, as soon as we started listening to that kind of stuff, I think, my parents are into it too. They like Nirvana, they like Foo Fighters, they like heavy music too. So they totally dig my music. I don't have to, I never really had to like fight for it. My parents were not, they're very open-minded people, so.
Oh, that's so awesome.
They come and see my shows whenever possible. They're really supportive.
Yeah. I know a lot of our viewers had childhoods where they were told that metal music or heavy music was bad. And I love that you grew up in a supportive environment.
I know. I don't take it for granted. Like, I fully realize that a lot of people had to like sneak out and fight for this. Actually, something really interesting that happened recently was I was in LA and I got into an Uber, and the driver, it was Halloween, right? So the driver was like dressed like a skeleton or something, and he had his car all decked out. It was really, really cool. And so he saw me with my hair, and he was like, "Oh, is this a Halloween costume?" And I was like, "No, this is just what I look like." And so he was like, oh, cool. Well, are you into metal? What kind of music are you into? And so we started talking about metal, and this Uber driver, I don't know if I don't think he was making this up. He sounded sincere, but he told me that he basically had to flee his country because of metal. And so he was from Iran, and there was a small scene of like maybe 50 people who were listening to metal underground, like really like, you're not allowed to listen to metal. You're not allowed to play metal. And he told me that he organized a metal show just for these very few people, like him and his friend, just because they so badly wanted to play metal and listen to metal. And they were having an amazing time. And then it got shut down, and everybody basically scattered and had to flee. People were arrested. He had to like flee the country. He fled to Turkey. He told me this entire story. He got a new ID. He came to the States, and basically it was just a crazy journey that he had to go on, a very risky one at that. He had to leave his life, leave his family, and all of that for metal. And so I told him, I was like, you are the most metal person I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of metal people. So props to you, because you are doing what you want to do despite everything standing in your way. So I appreciate you. And I didn't... he was kind of hinting throughout the ride, he was like, so do you like Gojira? Do you like Swedish metal bands? Do you like... And I was like, yeah, they're great. But I didn't actually say anything about Arch Enemy. I was thinking of saying it on the way out, but I just left it.
You're just going incognito.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it was Halloween, so a lot of people had crazy hair, and, it was... I think I blend in a little bit more on Halloween, actually. Yeah.
This is true, but also LA has a lot of days that people are just Halloween.
That's true.
So many cosplay events and so
like that. Yeah.
So many excuses to dress up.
Yeah, I like that.
It's good. His story reminds me a little bit of what I read about your grandparents. That essentially they were taken from their homes and sent to concentration camps in Germany, survived. And then I know that you ended up writing, was it The First Day in Hell? Mm-hmm. Right? As inspired by that. Looking at those lyrics earlier and just was super impacted, because it really describes their journey and some of the crazy things that they went through. Do you think that having grandparents that experienced that maybe made you more open and like curious and wanting to absorb his story? Or also, does it continue to give you a lot of other ideas for writing other than just The First Day in Hell?
Yeah. I mean, I never really explored that sort of personal history side in lyrics, but Michael suggested it, actually. He thought like, well, you can tell this story from like a very different perspective than most people. Mm-hmm. And it still blows my mind, actually, that my grandparents were essentially teenagers and fighting for their lives, escaping prisons where, I mean, without going into too much detail, they did some pretty badass things. Like, I mean, the stories that I heard from them and from like my great aunt and the very few survivors of that side of my family, the stories that I heard were just, I mean, first of all, I come from a line of badass women, I will say that. just
Hooray
total
for that.
badasses.
And way to continue it.
Thank you. I'm humbled by the fact that they actually had to live through that. And it really makes you consider, like, you know what? There's still places on earth that are dealing with the same situation.
Yeah.
I did not grow up in that situation because they fought to get away from it. Just horrible, horrible things, which I won't go into too much here because I don't want to be too much of a bummer. But I mean, starvation, finding your family slaughtered, like just insane things. And these are things that, you know, we're all aware went on at that point in time during the Holocaust. And I felt like it was a cool opportunity to kind of talk about that from a different perspective. It's not just from the history books. It's actually the stories that I heard growing up, really intense stories. And I think growing up, I heard them and I was like, okay, well, yeah, that's bad. And I understand, but I don't think I fully absorbed what it was until I got to the age that they were at that point, and I was able to kind of juxtapose how different my life is to what their life was at that point in their timelines.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's really intense. It's really intense actually. And they're no longer with us, unfortunately, but they were a wealth of really amazing stories. And I wish I had kept a journal or a book or something of everything that they told me, because it was absolutely horrifying, but also just such a testament to the strength of like a person's will to survive. So yeah, that inspired First Day in Hell. I haven't really dipped into it too much with other songs, but I just have an enormous amount of love and respect for, you know, that side of my family and what they went through for me to even exist. You know,
Exactly.
there was like a very good chance that none of the White-Gluzes would exist. You know, that's like everybody has like a very slim chance of existing, you know what I mean? But if you really want to get into it, but there was a lot working against us. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's also partly why you're able to bring, I would say often much more dark subjects to life in your music, because you are, like we talked about even before we hit the record button, you are very positive, and you even your lifestyle is just super clean, especially for, I would say, a lot of metal singers. You might expect to maybe drink alcohol every now and then, and even the way you eat is super clean. So do you think maybe that's part of the reason why you're able to draw from some sort of real dark, it feels like almost like a dark place or dark experience to communicate that message to people, even though you have a super clean lifestyle?
It could be. I'm really interested in human psychology and how the mind works, how the brain works, how our bodies work. You know, I'm very interested in humans as animals and as sort of mechanical beings, and as spiritual beings too. You know, I'm interested in that, even though I'm atheist, but I'm very, very interested in psychology. And there is, you know, a big consensus that trauma can be inherited generationally. And so from one generation to the next, trauma can be passed down. And it doesn't, and it's nature, not through nurture, just it's built into the DNA. And I think that that's a really fascinating concept, because there was so much in my lineage that I do wonder if that actually, where like I wonder where is that in me, you know? Just really crazy situations. And I still hear these stories from my dad, because these are my dad's parents. And so of course he grew up with them. And so he has all the stories that they told me and more. And it's like listening to, and he's a great storyteller too. So it's like listening to like the most insane historical documentary but it's first person perspective. So it hits so close to home that it's really, it's a weird feeling. I don't know what to call it. It's like fascination and a little bit of sadness, but a little bit of like intrigue and inspiration as well. And like I said, this type of genocide is still happening in the world now, which is absolutely horrifying. And I wish that I could do something about that. And I know a lot of people feel that way, like, okay, well, we know this is happening. What can we do? And it's a really helpless feeling too.
Do something about it though. When you record things or you write those songs down, you make them a memory, and the horror of that experience, you stamp that in time. That is doing something about it. And it's a really beautiful way, I think, to combat it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not a politician. I'm not I'm a musician, and, I wear many hats, but I know my limits as well. But yeah, I mean, I think I am a pretty positive person. I'm very realistic and I'm very sarcastic, and I think maybe sometimes that can strike people the wrong way and they don't fully understand. But in general, I'm pretty positive person. I really like to focus on the good things. I do appreciate, like, little things can get me really happy, like a cute bird will make me happy, like I still, and that's why I love to do like nature photography, because it's just because it's like, oh my God, the sun is beautiful and I'm actually existing at the same time as this beautiful sunset and I can appreciate it. This is amazing. Like, that gets me really happy and really excited. And I have that side of me, and I'm very healthy. I work out. I have, I'm vegan. I don't drink. I don't do any drugs, but I don't like happy music. So I'm a happy person, but I like angry, heavy, dark, twisted, creepy, sad music for whatever reason. That's just my taste.
There's so many things you mentioned in there that I want to ask you about. Let's see, I'm going to go back to the animals first.
Yes.
I'd read that your favorite animal is a whale. Is it still a whale?
I mean, I have a whale here. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. What kind of whale? Is that a blue whale or?
Yeah, this one is a blue whale.
So it's a beautiful tattoo.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's pretty hard to choose a favorite animal because I love them all so much. I go in waves, the next animal. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the next animal I see is going to be my favorite one always, pretty much. I think whales are amazing. They're so huge. I don't know if you knew this, but apparently they evolved back into the water from elephant type animals.
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, so they rose from this primordial ooze like we all did and developed legs and feet and the ability to walk on land. And they were these giant elephant type creatures. And then they went back into the ocean. So that's why they're still giant in the ocean. But if you look at their skeleton, there is the remnants of like knees.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating.
They're just nope, too dry.
Yeah, they're like, you know what? I'm sick of carrying all this weight around. I want to go somewhere where I'm more buoyant. And and back into the ocean they go. Yeah. I love animals. I love learning about animals and, everything from like their diet, how long they live, what's their gestation period, what climates do they live in, how long have they been on Earth? Like, I find that extremely fascinating. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I love animals. And I remember growing up, we had some sort of a club, like a monthly club where we would get these little pamphlets in the mail that we could add into a binder. I don't know what this was called, but every week or every month, something would come in the mail with a new fact sheet about an animal. Oh. And so I would get that and I would read about it like, oh my God, lemurs. And, and then put that into the binder in alphabetical order. And I ended up with this big binder of information about animals. And I wish I could find that. Cool. I'm sure it's still around somewhere, but I still want that. Like, if that still exists, I want to join that because I still want to get that information every week and just like focus on an animal every week. I think it's super interesting, super amazing. we have this like need to explore outer space or explore the deep sea. And it's like, we have so many aliens right here on land with us. You know what I mean? Like it's, I mean, you just walk down the street and like a squirrel is there and then a bird is there. And like, it's just, and like many different types of birds. Like, I know that it sounds like, it probably sounds like I am high, but I swear I'm not. I just think it's really amazing that we share this earth with so many different kinds of creatures, and they're all so different, and they have different abilities than us. Like maybe they don't have the same language as us or the same ability to, evolve with technology as us, but like birds can fly. Like we can't do that.
Right? And they've evolved their entire bodies to be able to be in the air.
Exactly. So I just find it really, really fascinating.
I totally relate, because we have a fountain that my husband built in our backyard when he proposed to me. He literally built me a fountain.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right? And in Arizona, it's pretty dry. So it attracts tons of little critters. Oh. And we name them. And then I cry if I see one that's like dying or it doesn't come back. And we have over 20 kinds of birds come and visit. And that's not even counting all the different types of hummingbirds. They're very plentiful here in Arizona. Right now we have a squirrel that we think is an Arizona gray squirrel, which is pretty rare. Okay. And it has been eating the flowers off of my plants, but I'm okay with it because it's really cute.
I know. I have a squirrel here. He's named Igor, and he insists on decapitating every flower. And he doesn't eat it. He just like I'm like, oh yay, my flowers bloomed, and then the next day the head of the flower is just on the ground. Like he doesn't even eat it. He's just like, this flower, like, and I know it's him, and I'll see him sometimes doing it, and I'm like, dude, I know what you're doing.
I want you to write a song called Decapitation that's about him and these flowers.
I see, that's me in a nutshell. It's like the song is Decapitation, and then it's about flowers and squirrels.
Yes, exactly. I need to know what the squirrel melody is. Okay. That's amazing. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go back over here to some notes. I love the windy and the finding out that we both really love animals and yes, and how I love understanding more about animal vocalization too. I think it's so cool. Maybe whales just wanted to be able to sing to farther distances. So
isn't it amazing?
Like, water. It'll carry my sound better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. And the other day, sorry, I'm going on a tangent again.
Oh,
you can see I get excited about this, but there is like this one, there's an app, I think it's called BirdNet, and it's like Shazam for birds. And so there was this one bird that I kept hearing who his riff, the bird's riff, was like, doo, doo, doo. And he just kept doing that over and over again. And then sometimes he would add to it and go, doo, doo, doo. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a cool melody, actually.
Right?
And so I needed to know what the bird was. And, I'm blanking right now. I believe it was like a red-throated warbler or something like that. But it's actually a cool app because you hear these birds and they're singing this melody over and over again. And like, even that is just so cute that they do that. That's how they communicate.
And really, they're just like screaming, like, I need sex. Like, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And we're like, oh, it's so beautiful. Exactly. It's less beautiful when humans do that,
Right? We just can't sound as pretty.
Yeah, no.
We can sound pretty, but you're right.
Yeah.
That's so funny. But it's like Messiaen a little bit, where he put all of the bird songs into actual musical writing, so you could totally steal that bird's melody.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'll talk to their management later and see if we can work out a licensing deal for his melody.
Is there copyright on bird song?
Exactly.
Oh, that's so fun. Well, you know what? I feel like we're talking about musical influences here, and I'm like, it sounds like animals and nature are influential in music, perhaps, and then it goes into like the deep, deep, dark spots. I wanted to know about classical music because I heard that you're a classical music fan, and obviously my background is in classical music, but
Yeah.
do you have any classical music favorites?
So I started listening to classical music. I mean, I listened from childhood onwards, basically. Um,
Nice.
so I have kind of two different ways that I consume classical music. So one of the ways is just to have it on in the background while I'm working, because I cannot put on music that has a vocalist while I'm working, because I get super distracted. Like I like as soon as anyone is singing, I'm like focusing on that, I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, what did they do there? What did they say there? How'd they do that? That sounded cool. Like I
Yeah.
can't focus if there's a singer. So I need music that has no singer. So I'll put on classical music for that. I find it really relaxing and cool. But then also sometimes I do the opposite, where I'm not doing anything else other than listening. And I love to listen to classical music and just sort of tune my ears to the different sections of the orchestra and just be like, what are the woodwinds doing here? Ooh, okay, that's what they're playing. And then, ooh, what's the brass doing here? And, and just really like pick out each sort of kind of micro melody that's going on, because it's beautiful to listen to the macro melody and listen to the entire production. But when you really tune into what each instrument is doing, there's so much going on that's just all weaving together and making this, it's like a painting. Like every section is bringing their own color and it's blending together beautifully. And I find that really, really inspiring, like in terms of production. I find it inspiring in terms of melodies. I really like Chopin's nocturnes, and I really love darker stuff too. But I think one of the great things about classical music is that it kind of weaves all over the place. It goes really happy, then really dark, loud, quiet, fast, slow. It really just goes to so many different places and doesn't really adhere to the rules of like pop music or, popular music, which I would put, rock and metal and all, like, the kind of music that has like short songs and band members and that kind of thing. Classical music doesn't really adhere to that structure necessarily. So
yeah, it's more progressive in a very sort of strange way.
Yeah,
Like
it's very
this
similar
ancient
to progressive music. Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I find it very, very interesting. I feel like when I listen to classical music, it's similar to like if I go to an art museum and I kind of just see like, ooh, this was made in 1545 by this person in Belgium, and this is the technique they use. This, and I love to just analyze that kind of stuff and just see what they were thinking at that moment. And I feel like classical music allows me to do the same thing.
I feel like I'm starting to understand. You're just a person who loves life and where it's come from. And so when you look at animals or when you listen to music, you're looking at the history of it and how it's evolved and how it's come to be what it is today. And you're analyzing that.
Yeah, I think I'm a very curious person and I love to learn. And so anytime that I can possibly learn something new, it's exciting for me. And, I like if I watch a movie, I'm on my phone, like, what did he just say? Where was that from? Okay. And I'm Googling like, wait, is that really how that happened? And I love to just know about, I don't know. It's just more interesting to me that way.
Yeah. And that actually I wonder if that drove your decision to go into making a solo album. Because that's a big transition to go from singing in a band to I'm going to do everything for this album. Learning the instruments, that's difficult. We have, a lot of aids for that these days. But learning the production side of that, getting your studio set up, learning how to record like that is a massive, massive undertaking. How did you learn to put that all together?
Yeah, you're totally right. It's a massive undertaking.
Yes.
Well, so essentially the idea for the solo album came about in, I think, 2016, because we had just wrapped up our touring cycle for War Eternal, and we had a few months off before we were going to dive into making the next album, and so which came out in 2017, which was called Will to Power. And so my manager, Angela, she was again, I need to be doing stuff. Like I said at the beginning, like I need to go somewhere, do something, be working. And so I started, I basically, before the release of War Eternal, I always had a day job that I worked at, like a desk job, with like this small, I guess you could call it like a merch company, basically. Like I was designing merch, basically.
Oh, cool.
Which is also cool because that skill has come in very handy in nowadays too. But so I basically told her, like, I'm going to go back to my desk job. I'm going to go to my day job because we have time off of touring and I can't sit here doing nothing. And she was like, are you crazy? Just write some songs. And I was like, huh.
Good woman.
Yeah, you know what? Why didn't I think of that? She's very smart, So I was like, wait, that's a great idea, actually. And so I started writing songs. But the thing is, like you said, writing songs as a singer who is putting lyrics and vocalizations and harmonies and structure over an existing piece of instrumental music is very different than writing from scratch. And so I think I had an acoustic guitar. I have like a little keyboard, like a piano, like a full-size piano, but it's a keyboard. And I started trying to write some songs. And so I was like, okay, well, I like how this is going. I went back to my notation, my AWG pen and paper notation. And then I realized that, like, wait, this notation works for vocals, but how am I going to tell myself what the drums are doing? How am I going to tell myself what the bass is doing and the guitar, And so I was like, wait, this is going to take a little bit longer. And so essentially from that point onwards, I went into building a home studio for myself. I had this vocal booth custom built from an engineer here.
That's your vocal booth behind you.
Yeah, this is my vocal booth.
You even have the window looking out. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of home vocal booths don't have that window.
Oh, it's so important. It really, because I'll get claustrophobic otherwise. But yeah, I found a friend of a friend who was an engineer and who was up for the challenge of building this vocal booth. And so I love it so much. That is so essential because you feel like, okay, nobody can hear me. I can try all the stupid sounds I want and no one's going to laugh at me.
Right.
Like,
I can crack a note and it's fine.
Exactly. So I had the vocal booth built. I got myself like a better setup computer-wise. I downloaded a bunch of different DAWs and played around with them until I found the one that I liked the most.
And you settled on?
I settled on Logic. It's not perfect, but I do really like it. And it has everything that I need to record everything. I started using TuneTrack products for Superior Drummer so I can program the drums.
Yeah.
I got a few more guitars. Started practicing like crazy, teaching myself how to play.
You taught yourself? Did you go on YouTube to find videos, or how was that teaching yourself happening?
I mean, luckily I'm surrounded by amazing guitar players, which is another thing I do not take for granted. So I have Jeff, I have Michael, I have Doyle, who are all amazing guitar players in very different ways. I'm also really good friends with Alex Skolnick of Testament. And so sometimes I would just, FaceTime them and be like, what am I doing wrong? Listen. And they would be like, okay, this is it. You're squeezing too hard on the neck. Put this finger. And they would just really help me learn, essentially.
Wow.
And then I would also sometimes look up guitar tabs for songs that I like. Just, simple chords and just learn, like sometimes Beatles songs actually, which are not super simple chords all the time.
They're not super simple. Yeah.
No, they're not. And so because I was doing that, I'm actually better at like open chords than I am at power chords, but power chords are very useful for writing metal. So, you
can read guitar tab, but you don't read. Yes. You don't read other sheet music, and you have your own notation. So you've got two kinds of notation down, really.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, and so it's been a journey of learning how to record myself, learning what different microphones do.
Right.
Even like proximity effect of going close to the microphone or backing up from the microphone, learning what headphones I like to have in the booth, and hardware like compressors and preamps. It's an ongoing journey, but I love it because I've also been able to employ all of this when recording guest appearances for collaborations I do. So in the past, I would always have to like track down a studio, and it would be really, timing wise would be really tight, and it would be expensive. And now I can actually just do it all myself, which is
in your
great.
pajamas.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
While holding like my cat, so it's just
It's like, don't purr too loud.
she'll add to it, but yeah, so it's been a real journey. It's very different. Sometimes I'll start with guitar chords and build from that. Sometimes I will start with a guitar riff. Sometimes I'll start with the drums. Sometimes I'll start with the vocals. Like songs sort of come to fruition from many different angles. And I'm just getting better and better every time I record something. So it's an ongoing journey, I would say.
So let's go through the gear that you have, and let's talk about just briefly, like, which ones are your favorites right now? I know like there's a ton of different ones that are good, but
yes.
What are you using right now in the booth? What's your microphone?
So right now I have the SE Electronics Rupert Neve microphone in there. I also have another microphone from SE Electronics, which is the Gemini, which is huge, like this big, massive microphone. Both of those I really like. They sound super nice. Obviously, I have this SM7B right here, which is a staple for death metal vocalists. I do use it quite a bit, but I've been leaning more and more towards the Rupert Neve SE model.
Okay.
I also have a Slate digital microphone.
Which those are so interesting.
Yeah. And I actually did something that was very helpful. I went to a studio called Spin Studios in Brooklyn, and I brought my microphones, and I also had, like, they had a U87, 67, like they had... I think 10 or 15 different microphones all set up in the sound room. And I went up to each and every one of them and sang a verse of like a song I wrote. And then we sat back and like did a blind control trial basically. And we were like, okay, this one, rank it 1 out of 15. This one, rank it, and just kind of ranked it. And then we compared our notes.
That's awesome.
And we actually all had the same top 3, which was the 67, I believe, which is what I just recorded the latest Arch Enemy album on. And the Slate, actually, which... so the Slate is like a digital microphone that has the ability to mimic very popular microphones, but at a much lower price point.
So a modeling microphone, essentially.
Exactly. And so a lot of engineers at first, from what I could tell, were like, hell no, I spent so much money on my microphones. I don't want this thing to pretend it's doing the same thing.
Yes.
But to be honest, I mean, it does a really good job. Like, I think that if people are looking for like a pretty affordable microphone that has some flexibility, it's a really good option. So I don't use it all that often now, but it is a good microphone actually. And then of course I have like SM58s, which I still love. I use them live. So I really can't say anything bad about those. I have a 57 also, which is pretty similar. And yeah, I think that's it actually. Yeah.
That was
I think that's it for microphones. Yeah.
That was good. What about the headphones? What kind of headphones are you using in the booth?
So are these the ones I'm wearing now? Let me feel.
Like,
oh yeah. Okay. So these are open back. What are they actually? Oh yeah, these are AKGs. And so I like open back headphones, which I'm sure you know this, but essentially it just means that you get some ambience from the room into the headphones. Live, actually, I use these. Like I use Ultimate Ears. Yeah, so they're... I can't get this to focus, but...
Okay, but Ultimate Ears, though.
Yeah, Ultimate Ears. And they have like an ambience hole in them. So essentially they allow some of the room sound to come in as well. And so I like that in studio headphones too. I will say though that I've had to switch away from them and switch to completely closed Shure headphones because of the bleed.
Yeah, the bleed.
Because
it's a problem.
Yeah, because I sing so loud that I need to have the music very loud in order to even hear it over my bone tone, So
hashtag bone tone.
Hashtag bone tone.
Wow.
Exactly.
Amazing.
So
We're talking essentially about like the conductivity of sound inside of your bones, inside of your mouth, because you hear your voice through bones and the inside. You don't actually usually hear it from the acoustics on the outside so well.
Exactly. So when I'm hearing from multiple angles. I'm hearing what the headphones are feeding me. I'm also hearing the inside. And then I'm also hearing what's happening in the room. You know, on stage, it's obviously amplified. And in the vocal booth, there's no sound in the room. Well, other than the natural acoustics that are coming out of my... What did you call it? My singing hole?
Your singing hole.
My singing hole, yeah. And so, but yeah, so I like to hear that ambience, but I have had to adjust in the booth just because of the bleed. And so what I'll usually do now to compensate is just kind of take one ear off so that I have one ear monitoring.
That thing.
Yeah. That way I have one ear monitoring the natural acoustic sound, and then I have the other ear monitoring what the microphone is capturing. Yeah.
I feel that. That's my preferred way when I'm doing recording.
Oh, what happened here?
We went dark. It's just like we were on the positive side of Alissa.
Yeah, that was my dark side coming out for a moment. I don't know. I just adjusted the camera a little bit and it went dark, but it seems to be okay now, right?
Yeah, it's totally back to where it was.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
What about preamps? Do you have a particular one you love?
Yeah. I have a warm audio preamp that I use. I will say I really do like the ability to physically turn knobs rather than doing it digitally. So I have that. I have a warm audio preamp and also compressor. I don't know if you run into this, but I have a super dynamic voice, and I'm not saying that as a compliment to myself.
Right. I know. It's like it is what it is. It's not necessarily bad or good.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm not saying like, ooh, I'm so dynamic. I'm saying like, no, there's like a lot of dynamics. Like some of it is extremely quiet and some of it is super loud. And so I have to adjust my input level a lot. I have tried this many times. I have still not found a way to do this without a physical hardware compressor that is happening before it enters the DAW. So I've tried, like I'll have a sentence, let's say one line that starts really quiet and then gets really loud, and I'll try backing away from the microphone and using microphone technique, but I hear that distance.
Exactly.
I hear the distance.
It sounds different.
Yeah, and so I don't like hearing that distance. And so the only way that I've been able to mitigate that is with an outboard sort of piece of hardware compressor to kind of balance out the dynamics a little bit before it even enters the DAW. But I try to leave my signal as pure as possible. So I always leave it as dry, as little compression as possible, so that when it comes time to mix it, myself or whoever the mixing engineer will be has as much freedom as they possibly can have.
Yeah, no, I feel the pain. I mean, opera, right? Like, we get really loud sometimes. And when I was looking for microphones and just the whole signal chain, essentially, it was very difficult because I was also doing some voiceover and essentially reading books to an AI. And that is, that's a lot closer. And then you have this bombastic, I'm dying sound that you're also trying to record. It's hard to capture that and not blast something somewhere in the chain.
And I mean, surprisingly enough, out of all the different kinds of voices that I do, my opera voice is the loudest.
Yeah.
And it really is the loudest. It really projects, like it'll clip a microphone to death.
Right. But ultimately, opera is designed to not have a microphone. So you have to learn, and, over hundreds of years, people have learned how to make that voice project further. And now that we have microphones, we can do a lot of different things. I think that's a large part of why we have so much divergence of style.
I think so too. I think microphones are, they can be just an essential tool that you use just to take idea from here and put there, like it definitely works like that. But they're also, I mean, they can be as personal as guitars, like A guitar also can just be like object with strings to create idea on, or it can be like an extension of your body. So I'm definitely not at the point with guitars where I feel that need, but with microphones, I do have my favorites for sure.
I think that's really good. You should have your favorites. And you've been using them to record your own stuff. Now, I got to have a little preview of some solo things from your Patreon. It was pretty awesome to get to hear those. And I understand that they're exclusive for Patreon. We might play a couple seconds here for people to hear what that sounds like. Do you think that Patreon has been a place for you to develop that solo writing?
Yeah. I mean, the really cool thing about Patreon is that it's kind of this nebulous thing that's ever evolving, and it's allowing me to just have a place to put any of the sort of creative projects that I have, just put them there. It's kind of like what I was saying when we were kids and we would do claymation and then photography and then a fashion show. Like, if I want to do that again, I actually have an outlet for it where there are people who are responsive and appreciative of it, which is super cool. And then on top of that, that Patreon actually like funds those projects. So it's this great kind of back and forth. It's super motivating for me. And so I've been releasing a song every season of 2022.
Lovely.
So I call it Song of the Season. And so essentially there was the winter, the spring, and the summer that just came out last week. And these songs are not going to be a part of my solo album. They're not going to be anywhere except for on Patreon. And they're exclusive to the Patreon page, and people can, they can join for whatever feels comfortable, 50 cents, $1, it doesn't even matter. And then they get access to everything I've posted there, which is more than just those 3 songs. There's a ton of stuff on there. So,
it's so awesome.
Yeah. And so
it's such a good deal too. Ultimately, if you join at the lowest level in a lot of Patreons, it basically covers the processing fee. And then you get access to an artist's inner workings.
Well, you have a Patreon too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, like that kind of like give and take community that's there, where it's like, okay, so you guys are actually motivating me to do more of this. I think it's a really great model for musicians, to be honest, and teachers, creators of any kind. I think it's a great model. So I've sort of just leaned into that, and absolutely, like the songs that I'm releasing, the songs of the seasons that I'm releasing, they don't really match what I have for my solo album. And that's why I've given them this kind of exclusivity on Patreon, where it doesn't sound like Arch Enemy, it doesn't sound like what my solo album is going to be. It's its own thing.
It's amazing, because it used to be that to support an artist, you had to pay a ton of money. And Patreon has made it so artists are accessible to thousands upon thousands of people. And if you want to know more about an artist or boost them in some way, it is one of the best ways to do it. You have a more personal connection. You're seeing often, all of the machinations happening behind the scenes and the process. You end up having a greater appreciation as well for that artist. It's just a totally brilliant platform. And I think it was especially essential for many, many artists during COVID to just continue existing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started my Patreon right before COVID, so I guess I was a little ahead of the curve there.
That's good.
But I mean, like you said, I mean, you can, even if you like an artist and you don't even care about the benefits, you can still just throw them $1 a month or whatever. You could pay like $12 a year if you want, and that still contributes to, maybe it only covers the processing fee or whatever for the platform itself, but it actually is motivating anyways. Like, even if we don't really get money from it, we're just like, okay, well, it's still motivating to know that this person is interested enough in what I do that they're willing to take some of their hard-earned money and send it my way, and that's cheaper than the cost of buying an album even. But it's kind of like, and you obviously get the album, but you also get all this other stuff. So I think it's really a brilliant platform. The fact that it's a good business model, not just for musicians, but also painters, teachers, personal trainers, authors, like it doesn't even matter. There's so many different kinds of creative people there. So
Totally.
I really like it. I think it's a really, really good platform. I'm very curious to see if the music industry will lean more towards that. And from what I've seen so far, it is leaning more towards that.
So.
Because when I joined Patreon, Spotify wasn't doing this support artist thing, but it is now. Yes. Facebook wasn't doing it, but it is now. It's kind of like a lot of the social media platforms that we're more familiar with and that are more popular are, taking a little bit of a tip from Patreon and seeing that, okay, well, this audience isn't just here to consume free content. They actually want to support the creator of that content. And Patreon is a great way to actually facilitate that. And I think I just really think it makes sense. For me, it really makes sense.
It does.
So I
love our patrons.
And it's cool also just to see like, oh, these people get it. Like they get it. They understand what this is like. And it's very inspiring and very motivating.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's lovely. And I think it's actually partly due to some of our shared patrons that I heard so much about you. And they're like, oh, you have to hear her. Oh, Lisa. And I believe it was partly through their recommendations that I first heard you. And that was in the Camelot collaboration with you and Liz.
Sacrimony?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Tommy's really awesome.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so can you talk a little bit about collaborating? And when you approach a collaboration, sometimes you have a role that's assigned where you're going to be the harsh vocalist that comes in, right? But other times you're approaching it and maybe your role is less defined. Do you like to define that role yourself? Or, if not, are there ways that you maintain your individuality in that collaboration? Or if you're filling someone's shoes, how do you make it your own? I know there's a lot of questions.
No, those are great. Those are great questions. I do a lot of collaborations. I love doing collaborations. I've actually asked my patrons to help me compile like a playlist of all the collaborations that I've done because to be honest, I don't sometimes I don't remember all of them because I'm like, it slips your mind. Like I've done dozens and dozens. So I love doing collaborations as long as the people are cool and the music is cool. That's all I ask for. And so sometimes, for example, I collaborated with Soilwork, and that was basically already a complete song. So there wasn't much room for me to, it was pretty defined. And so I was like, okay, so I'm going to do some harmonies. I'm going to do some doubling. I'm going to give some improv stuff here. And that I think was really cool. But then there's also songs like one that I just did for Me and That Man, which is Nurgle from Behemoth. That's his kind of blues rock side project.
I heard that he does country or blues on the side, essentially.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's cool. It's really cool. And so in that case, he just was, he just sent me a message. It was like, hey, you want to sing on this? Check it out. And it was just a bass and claps. So, and not on a click, it was actually beautiful how raw it was. And it still is. That's the form that it is on the album too. Oh, cool. So bass clapping and just humming. And so he sent me a few lines of lyrics and was like, this is what I was thinking. I was like, okay, so I'll write some more lyrics along the same lines as what you wrote. And so I'm listening to the song, and then at the end I hear, right at the end of the song, there's this kind of epic chorus that comes in that has a singer already. And I'm like, that isn't Nurgle, is it? And I asked him, like, is that you? Because that sounds a lot like, and he's like, Devin Townsend. And I was like, I love Devin Townsend. I love everything he does. And so then I was like, wait, so this is going to be, I'm going to be on a song with Devin Townsend? Oh my God. So that made it even more exciting. But
that's awesome.
All that to say that song was completely open. I don't even think Nurgle knew that I did clean singing when he asked me to participate in it, because he didn't seem to be really like familiar with, you know, my stuff, like aside from Arch Enemy. And so, I mean, maybe he did, but it didn't really seem like it, because he was like, it doesn't have to be good, you know, just like it has to be real and raw and convincing and, you know, honest. That's what it has to be. Passionate, honest. And I was like,
wow,
I can make it all that and also be good.
Yeah.
You know?
And also be good.
And also it'll be good, you know? And so that was really cool, because that, I got into the booth and I had, you know, the paper with lyrics, and I didn't really have a clear idea of where I was going to go. I kind of knew the note that I wanted to start on. I was like, okay, I'm going to start there. And then I just sort of went, and I did the whole thing in one take, and that's what I kept. So that was actually a really cool song for me, because I wrote it as I was singing it. I didn't really like plan it ahead of time. So I don't think there's like a clear verse, chorus, anything like that. It's just sort of like a stream of consciousness, automatic writing thing in the vocal booth. And so that was a super cool collaboration for that reason. So it really varies. Yeah, it really varies. Sometimes it's more defined. Sometimes, like what you were talking about with Camelot, there was this clear like Elise is like the angel and I'm the devil, like, you know, like kind of dichotomy thing. So there was a much more defined moment. A lot of the songs that I've done with Camelot have been like that. Like there's a couple other music videos that I'm in where I, you know, come in for the kind of breakdown screaming part, and then I'll just harmonize at the end. And those are all really great songs, I think. And like you said, Tommy's a fantastic vocalist, one of the best I've ever heard. And Elise is amazing too. They're both like out of this world, amazing vocalists.
That's awesome. I think they probably think the same of you.
I hope.
Right? You're like, good vibes all around. That's really cool. Speaking of other videos that you were in, how much did the headpiece weigh in Demons Are a Girl's Best Friend?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. You know, I was like, suffer for your art, you know, so it was, I gotta say, in between takes, I was holding it up like this because it was super painful, actually. But that's because I was wearing it for like 10 hours straight, you know?
Yeah. And I know even a wig, like with the way the pins and everything, like even a wig for 3 or 4 hours in an opera gives you a headache. Yeah. Music videos take a long time to film, and that was a massive headpiece.
Yeah, and you know, I was also like wearing heels that I'm not really good at balancing in, and
I want to ask about singing in heels. So yes, keep going.
Yes, I think I know what you're gonna ask. And so I just was like, sorry, I don't know if you can hear that dog barking and going crazy.
Oh, it's okay. I probably had a newborn scream in the background at some point.
Okay. So the corset, the breastplate, the headpiece, the crown. There was like a lot of really cool sculptural pieces of wearable art that I wore in that music video that were all made by Candy makeup artist, who is absolutely amazing. And I really had a vision for this video. I was like, honestly, as soon as Powerwolf asked me to cover that song for them, I looked at the video and I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. And I was just like, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to change the words. And I only told them afterwards. I was like, here it is. But by the way, I changed the lyrics a little bit because now it's coming from a woman's perspective. So
yes,
just to let you know, this is what I was picturing. And I just told them, like, in passing in an email, I was like, you know what? You have nuns stripping. I want monks fighting. Okay. If you're gonna exaggerate female sexuality, then I'll exaggerate male testosterone. You know, it was just sort of like, you know what I mean? I was like, if that's what you're doing, I'm going to give you this. And then the really cool thing is they were like, actually, yeah, let's do that. Like, that's a great idea.
Right.
And so we actually made that music video come to life. And it was a great experience working with Witsky Visions, which is the music video team that did that video. And they actually also did the video that we just released today as of filming this, which is In the Eye of the Storm, the Arch Enemy newest single. So they did that video too.
Yay for releasing that. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And so it was, not comfortable, but very cool to look at. And so I can't blame anyone but myself for having these, 8-foot horns on or whatever it was. So I had an idea of what I wanted to look like, and that was it. So I was just going to do whatever was needed to make that happen. And in the end, it was like just holding the horns with my arms in between shots. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, the stunt crew that was there, they were like really fighting and throwing each other on the floor and into poles and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I can handle this because look at what they're doing. So yeah.
That's amazing. How do you feel about singing in corsets?
I do not wear corsets live.
I
don't think I'd put
that together.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever worn a corset live, except for maybe with Camelot, but it would have had like stretchy string in the back. With Arch Enemy, I cannot wear a corset. I don't foresee how that would be doable.
That's hard.
I hate it. I don't know how else to put it. I hate wearing corsets. I hate singing in corsets. I don't wear them. It's for music videos, that's different because it's like I'm creating a visual and like the track's already recorded. But when it comes to performing live, I bend at the waist and I belly breathe way too much to make a corset make sense. And even just like jumping wise, like, my knee is connecting with my eye and like I'm just like a mess. Like I'm like the Tasmanian devil on stage, and I can't imagine doing that while being like crunched in the waist. So
I love that you are the Tasmanian devil on stage. What a great description.
Curious, like what's your take on that actually?
Well, I've had to sing a lot in corsets, and I also agree they're not easy to sing in. I remember going to a store in San Francisco when I was at San Francisco Opera for the summer, and I went to a corset store there looking at maybe getting a regular custom corset that I would essentially take to different opera companies. Operas do period pieces all the time, so
of course
corsets are very, very common. And at that store, they talked to me about how there are two people that they make a different corset modification for, two kinds of people, swimmers and opera singers. And I would assume that this applies to other singers as well. They probably just don't often have singers other than opera singers coming in and asking for corsets to perform in. And they would essentially create like some extra boning and elasticity down around that lower part of the rib cage to allow for more expansion. And then you had to practice extra in them and sort of learn how to lean against the corset on the outside. It's a strange feeling. And even with that, I never have felt like I sang better in a corset than I did without a corset. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, they look great. They look beautiful. I know some singers that just kill it in a corset. But for me personally, it's just like, I always try to have that balance between like functionality and fashion, or like visual effect and comfort. And like I said, I'll deal with being uncomfortable. Like those horns are a testament to, but when it comes to the live performance, there's already so many factors going on that I really need to make it like as smooth as possible for me. Just to be able to perform properly and move the way that I need to move for the music. So
I agree.
For me with Arch Enemy live, corsets are not happening.
Do you ever wear high heels on stage?
No.
I mean, why don't you wear high heels on stage?
I will say, like, some of my friends, like Flor from Nightwish and Simone from Epica, they rock heels on stage. I've seen Flor walk onto like a grate. Like,
oh my gosh,
heels.
Great in heels.
And I'm just like, how are you not dying? Like, how are you not falling over with your feet broken in half? Like respect, because I can't do that. I mean, I can handle like a tiny, tiny little platform. But I mean, I do a lot of like really high jumping and kicking and balancing. And I I can barely walk in heels. Like, I'm not good. I love how they look. And I know that there's a lot of people that are so well-versed that they can do a flying drop kick into the splits, death drop in heels, and they rock it. But I wish I was that bitch. But I am not that bitch. I'm just not her. And I can't... I mean, I'm really bad. I'm just bad with heels. I'm bad with them. I've borrowed some of Simone's shoes before, actually. I've borrowed some of her boots before and worn them for different video shoots and photo shoots. And in my head, I'm like, she wears these live? How does she do that?
What is going on? How is this woman doing this? Right?
Yeah, they're magic. Yeah. I don't know. They have some sort of superpower that I do not possess.
You know, I've been put in so many different heels for roles, and I always got excited when they told me that this production, you could be barefoot. Like, yes, I can be barefoot on stage. You can feel the stage better. There's the way that when you have a really high heel, it can also create a little curvature in the pelvis, and then that doesn't really help for the lower support. But I will say there is one set of crazy high heels that I put on once to be a robot unicorn and dance on top of this like really high rock. And
I love that sentence, by the way. I need that on a shirt.
Right? It's in a music video. Yeah. But these shoes that the costumer recommended to me, she wanted to have like that hoof-like appearance, essentially, but also be sparkly and fun. So she directed me towards this brand of shoes that is for strippers. Okay? Yes. Because they have to have decent shoes that they're dancing in and spin like all the crazy things. So they're called magic. Pleasers is the brand of shoes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. I was shocked. I could move in those.
You know, I recently wore like 10-inch pleasers for this fashion shoot that has not come out yet.
Whoa.
I gotta say, I couldn't. It wasn't any better for me. You know who's amazing with that is Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm.
Oh yes! Oh my gosh! I just was looking at a clip of her in heels at like the Country Music Awards or something, and it was like
she's like jumping, kicking. She'll do like a balance on the front edge of the shoe somehow, and also, by the way, while shredding and singing, like
right. You're like, if you fall, your guitar is gonna break too.
I know. I'm just like, you know what? Stop being so awesome, but actually don't. Please continue. But just know that you're fucking awesome because it's like mind blowing. Like I don't know. I mean, I guess I could maybe do it if I practiced, but that's like that's one thing I want to allow myself to just have is like not worry about breaking my ankles. You know? But also I will say I actually have like a pinched nerve in my foot.
Oh.
That it's kind of okay now, but for a couple of years it made standing on my foot at all very painful.
Oh, that sounds
And
awful.
I needed to have like special, actually our guitar tech comes from a family of podiatrists. So he was able to like make me like a custom insole to put in my stage boots to kind of help that a little bit. But it was like, basically every time I would put pressure on my left foot, I would get like a shockwave up the nerve of my entire leg, like all the way up to my hip. And so it's kind of better. It's a lot better now, actually. But that was something at some point where I think I actually spoke to Flora about it. And I was like, don't you have foot problems from heels? And she was like, yes, I do. So,
yeah.
So yeah, they look great, but they're very scary to me.
Yeah, no, I don't like them on stage. I'm actually kind of excited to hear that you're staunchly against them on stage. Let's bring back a different kind of fashion.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, respect and props to those who rock them. I don't think I can do that. I think it's really interesting that you brought up as well, just having your foot grounded into the stage for singing and the way that affects your posture, because it really does, like everything. Yeah. You know, it's your body, and having that ability to ground your feet into something really helps singing.
It does.
I remember speaking with Christina from Lacuna Coil after they did this amazing show where she was suspended in the air above the stage, and she had this amazing long draping dress down, and she was really high up in the air. And I was like, that is amazing, and you look amazing, and you sound amazing. And she was like, you know, I I was really struggling not being able to ground my feet into something while I was singing. I mean, and she's amazing. She never struggles. She's like always sounds perfect. But she did tell me that she missed the grounding feeling of having like feet planted on the floor.
Yeah, I've hovered in air in roles before, and it was it's very disturbing. And then at the same time, basically whatever your harness is or whatever connection you have with gravity.
Yeah.
That's where you have to end up sort of grounding into instead. And if you've practiced your whole life, like all of us have, with your feet on the floor, then it can be jarring.
Yeah. I've done like a suspension in a harness for a music video that is not out yet. But
that would be fun.
So I didn't actually have to sing, but even just to be miming and like quietly singing along with the song, I was like, ooh, this is weird. This is different. It's definitely a weird feeling.
Right. Now you have that experience in case someday in a live show you fly.
Exactly. It was good practice.
Amazing. Well, let's talk a little bit about that technique then. I have a few very specific technique things I want to ask you about.
Absolutely.
One of the first is how you think about pitch center in your harsh vocals, right? Clean vocals, your vocal folds essentially go wacka, wacka, wacka at a certain speed per second. And that wacka, wacka speeds up. If you go higher, it slows down if it's lower. And it's very studied. We know exactly how clean singing, a regular pitch happens. Now, I heard you, it was in Sunset song.
Sunset Over the Empire?
Yes, Sunset Over the Empire. I heard you in Sunset Over the Empire do slides going up and down with your harsh vocals. That tells me you have very specific control over the pitch center, even if it's not a true pitch, of the sounds you're making that are harsh. How do you affect that pitch?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love talking shop about vocals. So thank you for that question. I love singing and I love vocals and I find it super interesting to talk to other vocalists. So thank you for that. Okay, so I'm a painter first. I was a painter before I was ever a singer. And so I'm a rather visual person. And I think of my voice the way I think of paint, where you have color and you have texture and you have opacity. So again, maybe this is another code here. Maybe this is a new code. But so for example, watercolors are quite translucent and you would have to layer them many times to get any semblance of opacity. And to me, that is, if I have a very breathy kind of soft tone like this, that to me is a translucent color.
Okay.
But if I'm belting it, then that is an opaque color, more like an oil paint. And then the texture is it well blended across the canvas? Is it impasto where I can see the brush strokes and I can see the knife strokes? And that to me is the growling texture that I add in. And that's kind of how I think about, and so that's like, or the rasp, how much rasp is there? And so, so the color is either very opaque or very translucent based on how much breath is in it. And then the texture is how much rasp is there, with, of course, 100% rasp being my growling technique and maybe just a raspy belting note being, a little bit less of a textured, a textured technique. So I have two different ways that I approach this. Either I start with clean singing and I add in rasp until it reaches a point, or I start with a scream and I add in a note until it reaches a point. And I feel like both of those techniques get about this far. They don't totally cross in the middle, and I'm working on that. I would love to have them cross. But for example, in House of Mirrors, the chorus, it's a scream, but I'm going, suspicious simulacrum, distort your flesh and bone. And so that is like kind of the melody that's happening, but it's in the screams.
Uh-huh.
And so for that one, I start with a scream and I push a note into it.
Uh-huh.
And then the reverse of that would be like in Reason to Believe, the pre-chorus, I go, self-hatred, I know it well, except in a very raspy tone. And so that one is the clean voice with rasp added on top. And if you compare what those two sound like, if you A-B them, which you're welcome to do, you'll see that they're kind of approaching the center, but they're coming from two different sides.
Yeah. My brain is like trying to figure out what's the science that's happening behind that. Because I know that if you're approaching it from the clean side, you've got your two vocal folds that are sort of the fundamental that's set up. And then you have some stuff on top that is adding distortion to it somewhere. Where do you feel that distortion?
So it's a couple different places. Again, like you were saying, when I do slides, like in many, many songs, I'll go from low notes to high notes just to add a little bit of variety to the screams. I actually do feel them down here.
Whoa!
But I'm trying more and more to feel them up here, just to take off some of that weight and make it a little bit less of a heavy load for my voice, essentially. And so it's, voice is such an interesting thing. It really is.
It's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of, it definitely takes a certain velocity of air and a certain volume of air coming out to create the screams the way that I do. I don't scream in the same way that a lot of other modern death metal vocalists do. So it's not only coming out from like up here. There's a lot coming out from down here as well, and it's very loud. I know a lot of vocalists who have amazing texture and tone, and it sounds fantastic, and it's very quiet. And that's cool because then the microphone amplifies it, and like they don't have to like have all this weight on their own body. But that's not exactly what I do. I still carry a good deal of weight in my body. Yeah.
There's a few really interesting things like that you said that made me kind of go to this and understand it a bit. Often volume is very heavily affected by air pressure on some sort of structure that is essentially in our larynx or in our vocal tract. So if you are making a louder sound, then that means you have more air pressure that's building up. And that, like you said, like that it can be a lot more exhausting. So and also it's so interesting that you have, when you're associating different notes, you're really thinking about essentially resonance that's happening in your chest or resonance that's happening up in your cheekbones, because I know a lot of people at one point people have come to me and said, I'm singing from my chest. I say, well, no, that's not where the phonation happens. That's not where it happens. But we don't really feel where the phonation is happening a lot of times, right? Like that's happening in our larynx. We have very few nerve endings there. But we end up feeling essentially resonance that bounces down.
Yes.
Right. It goes back down the trachea, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
And then we feel it reverberate in our chest. And when we have that reverberation, that sensation, that feeling is stronger than the feeling of the vocal folds going wacka, wacka, wacka. And that can be essentially a sensation we tap into when we know our sound is good.
Yes.
So it's so interesting, though, that I didn't know that you would have the same association with harsh vocals. I haven't experienced, I guess I've experienced that a little bit when playing with beatboxing and false folds, where I could feel it like rumble in my chest. But I hadn't thought about, when you're doing lows to highs, you would essentially be able to measure that pitch center by how it rumbled in your chest or maybe how it rumbled in your cheekbones.
Yeah, I'm very much dependent on hearing still. That's one of the things that I really want to work on, and I do consistently work on, is what I call just stand and deliver, and not stand, deliver, and check if it was okay.
Yeah.
So I, I need to hear myself properly, and hearing on stage is so difficult because, well, first of all, you're in a huge venue with thousands of people, and the sound coming from the PA is bouncing across all of them and off the walls. But then also I'm the me and my guitarist, my stage left guitarist, Jeff, were the only ones on in-ear monitors. And then my bassist and my other guitar player, Michael, are listening to the stage sound. So our stage is extremely loud. And I'm running around the stage with a microphone. So I'm picking up all that sound. And so as loud as my voice is, it doesn't compete with a cymbal. It doesn't compete with a blaring guitar cab. Like, those are just much louder things than my voice. You know what I mean? So so it's pretty hard for me to hear on stage. And I'm trying to really work. Like, this is, I mean, there's a ton of stuff I want to work on and that I try to work on because I always want to improve. But this is one of those things. It's just connecting with my voice to the point that I know what sound is happening, even if I don't hear it. And I do have that confidence where I can tell what kind of a sound I'm making. The problem is that, and I think this is just human nature, if you don't hear what you're doing, you do it harder and louder and you push more.
Yes.
And so that essentially creates a cycle on tour where it's like, if I didn't hear myself that night, that show was okay, but now this show is going to be a struggle because I'm a little sore from the last show. And now tonight's going to just exacerbate that problem. So tomorrow's show is going to be actually even harder because I'm working now on already exhausted, soft tissues. And so, so hearing is absolutely essential on stage. I think it's so important. And I maybe you would know about this actually. I don't know. This is a question for you. Okay. I'm flipping the script here.
Oh, okay.
So I have an issue where, the feeling of your ears popping on an airplane?
Oh, yeah.
I have that constantly all day, every day with every inhale and exhale that I take. And so as a result, I find that I avoid breathing through my nose because I know it's going to pop and then I'm going to have to unpop it. And when it pops, my ears, like, it's like somebody took the EQ and went like this.
Yeah, they get
so it's
plugged.
Like I'll get like only high end and no low end, extremely loud, and then it unpops and it's like quieter with more low end. And that happens to me on stage while I'm performing. Actually,
that's crazy.
It's super annoying.
It's like you suddenly get a filter, right?
Exactly. It almost, depending on what the monitor mix is like, it almost sounds like my microphone is cutting out, but it's just my head that's cutting out. So I don't know. Do you have like any advice for that?
Honestly, I would see an ENT and ask about it. I'm curious. Essentially, your ear tubes are a little small, which might make them a little more sensitive to fluids. And it makes sense because your sinuses are connected in there. And so if you're keeping your soft palate up by, not breathing in through your nose, then I could see that makes it so it's less affected. But the other thing that's kind of interesting is when you're singing, like it's shaking everything up. So I can see that's affecting it. And I've had times where I've experienced what you're talking about, probably just like from allergies and essentially getting a little inflamed in there. And when you're singing with that, it is extremely disrupting.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a few specialists now. I have seen ENTs about this because it's been years and it's been so annoying. And so I also thought like maybe it's allergies because I am allergic to like trees and stuff, which sucks. But
it does.
Then the annoying thing about that is that the allergy pills have the side effect of dry larynx. And so it's like, okay, so I'm solving one problem, but creating another problem. But essentially what the ear, nose, and throat doctor told me, and he, put the tube up my nose and took a left turn and looked in my ears, and then he looked down my throat, like he looked at everything. And he said exactly what you said, that my eustachian tubes are very narrow, very small. So when I do exercise, when I am, when I'm starting to do like a workout, which is exactly what I do on stage.
That's true.
The soft tissues swell, and when they swell, they can actually swell shut. And then to repressurize my nose and my ears, because they're connected, like you said, popping them, it's kind of like releasing the air, but then it kind of swells shut again. I also have exostoses, which is like, they call it surfer's ear, which I do surf, but I don't think I surf enough to have an ear, but essentially that's like a bone deformity in the ear. And I wonder if that has some sort of effect on it as well. Yeah. And so ultimately what they told me was the only solution is surgery, and I am terrified to do anything like that. So I've just been living with it, basically.
Yeah, I don't think I would. If you don't have to have surgery, it's like generally don't do it.
Yeah.
Then
Especially
you learn that sensation. You've learned how to work with that sensation. And if that one is missing, it might actually throw you off more.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, that was just, I ask everyone if they have advice on that because it's so irritating. So I appreciate your input.
I will say with allergies, I had so many vocal problems associated with allergies. And the thing that really tipped it over medicine-wise was getting immunotherapy. So like I ended up doing the drops under the tongue. I know a lot of people do shots regularly.
Okay.
And that reduced my inflammatory reaction by a big margin. It really saved me as a singer. So
that's, I haven't tried that. So maybe I should actually look into that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it really changes.
I've noticed,
and makes quality of life better too.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. I mean, the only thing that I have seen, I mean, everybody has their little bag of tricks, right? They're like, have this kind of tea and have do this and do that and stand on one foot and blink 3 times. And,
right?
like everybody
that works for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, absolutely nothing works, with the only exception being steam inhalation. And so obviously like your larynx is the door to your lungs, not the door to your stomach. So if you're eating or drinking something like, like it's going into your stomach, but
it goes on the other tube.
Yeah. Like if you want something to hit your larynx, you have to breathe it in essentially. And I will say that when I've been really sick on tour, the only thing that you can really do is just wait to get better. But what does help at least a little bit is just consistently, like I'm talking like for 15 minutes every hour throughout the day type of thing, or even longer, just putting a towel over my head with a bowl of just water, just boiled water, and just inhaling that steam. And then maybe, taking nice deep breaths, calming breaths, and then maybe doing a little like, whoo, every now and then on the exhale, just trying to like, it's like physiotherapy for the vocal folds because I can handle a lot, but when I get sick, the larynx is the first thing to go.
Of course it is, right? It's targeted. But one of the things, if you really like the steam, I don't know if you sung on straws. Straws are amazing. You should sing through straws. If you're specifically singing in a straw that goes into water, some singers... Yeah, okay. So you get that hydration benefit also.
Yeah,
So I thought that was... Okay, you already do that. You probably use like the Dr. Vox thing or whatever.
Is that the thing that is that like that, it looks like an oxygen mask and it goes into...
It does have that attachment, yeah, but it's like a bottle and it has the straw and James Labrie showed it to me and then I tested it and it's really good.
I don't have that, but I did borrow one while I was recording Deceivers because the studio had one and he was like, here you go, you can, we'll clean it after obviously. And I really liked it. I actually really liked it. On tour, I've just been doing it kind of the old fashioned way. And I have a thermos basically with, that like keeps liquids very hot.
Yes.
And I'll just put boiling water in there. And then every once in a while, I'll just open it, like just take a hit and then.
It's my steam hit.
Yeah. Just don't look at me while I'm doing my hit,
I love it. Yeah. Well, let's, in our remaining time here, I want to hit on 2 things. I want to hit on Deceivers, your new album with Arch Enemy that's coming out. And then I also have a few patron questions for you. So let's talk about the album first. You have a new album. It's coming up. I did take a quick peek at Handshake with Hell, which I believe is the first one on the album.
It's the first song. Yeah.
I loved the intro of it. I felt like it was really like expanding into the album very nicely. And then the vocal layering on it later in the song was gorgeous. super, super gorgeous. So I'm very excited to see what else you guys do with that. Now, I heard that this was really, really difficult to record, that there were a lot of complications. So what happened?
Well, there was this thing that happened in 2020. I don't want to alarm you, but there was a global pandemic that happened in 2020 and 2021 and 2022.
Right?
And so you know what? I can't complain. It was a little bit trickier than it normally would have been because we're a band that lives like all over the world. So like we don't live in one city. We don't live in even one country. So for us to get together, it was a little bit harder just because there were so many travel bans in place. But everybody was going through the same thing at that point. So I can't even complain. You know,
But how long were you stuck in Europe?
So I basically lived in Europe for all of 2021, but I loved it. So
I know, it's not such a bad thing. You're like, the bread was fantastic.
It's not a bad thing at all. I lived mostly in Germany, but I also spent quite a bit of time in Denmark because that is where we recorded the album. And then I also spent some time in Sweden and in Poland. And then very briefly, I was in Netherlands and Belgium doing some shoots and things like that. Also in Serbia, I did some shoots.
Wow.
So honestly, essentially what happened was when it came time to record the album, Canadians were not allowed to enter Germany. But that's where I was meeting with Michael to go over the lyrics and go over everything that we had written together. And so even though I was technically not supposed to be entering, I knew that there was a chance there would be an exemption for work-related purposes. So I was like, I'm just going to give it a shot. I'm going to go. Hopefully they'll let me in. If they don't, at least I tried. And so I got there and they pulled me over to secondary inspection and I was like, oh, man, it's like, you know, it's never been like that. Like, honestly, the hardest country to get into is the States.
Yes.
So like with Europe, it's always been easy breezy. 1, 2, 3, here we go. We're in. Like, it's not usually difficult, but luckily they did understand the work exemption and I was allowed in. I fulfilled my mandatory 2-week quarantine or whatever it was at that time. And then we were able to start working. But Jeff, my guitarist from Seattle, also needed to come over to lay down his solos and everything. And he was not so lucky. He couldn't get in. And so at that point, I told myself, okay, so I can either stay here, so I am here where all of my work is, or I can go home and risk not being able to get back in the way that Jeff just wasn't able to get in. And so I basically just made an impulsive decision. I was like, I'm just going to stay. And so I just was like, I'm not going on the flight home. I'm going to get myself like a residence visa, which I got.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just,
nice.
I just set it up so that I was able to continue working because honestly, after 2020, I couldn't handle another year in isolation with no work.
Yeah.
So, I just couldn't handle it. And so I stayed in Europe, which ended up being great because I got myself a little, well, first it was a van and then it became a car, but I rented a vehicle and I drove from Denmark into Germany. I did a photo shoot in Hamburg with a with a photographer named Franz Scheppers. Then I drove over to Berlin and I did a photo shoot and a sort of like editorial video shoot with Sasha Gerstner, who is also in the band Halloween.
That's right.
And then because I was in Germany, I actually did a little cameo appearance in Halloween's video because they were shooting a video right near where I was. That's also why I was able to do that Demons Are a Girl's Best Friend video with Powerwolf, because I was there already in Germany where they were shooting.
That opened up a lot of things for you.
It really did. And so that's why, I mean, I drove over and did a photo shoot, like a multi-day photo shoot with Tim Tronco in his beautiful studio in Belgium. Some fashion stuff, some stuff for like other projects that are happening. I was able to just really get a lot done. And so it was one of those like happy accidents, I think. And then of course, by the end of the year, we were able to get all of Arch Enemy together in Sweden and we shot a bunch of music videos, which mostly have been released now at this point. So it was extremely productive, and I really had a fantastic time. So it was no complaints. I'm very happy with it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And the album is coming out August 12th, right?
That's right. Yeah. So in like about a month from now. Yeah, August 12th.
That's awesome. And the video that's released today, is that also from the new album?
Yes. So just a couple hours ago, we released In the Eye of the Storm, which was our fifth single, our fifth music video from the album Deceivers. And so we just premiered that. It's super fun to do those premieres because me and the rest of my bandmates are there watching the music video at the exact same time as everybody else. And we're in the chat and reading everyone's comments. And so we just did that. And yeah, that's exciting because that's now just one more song that we can add to our live set list if we should so desire.
I love live premieres too. We have those very regularly on our channel, and we get to communicate then directly with subscribers. It's so good. I'm going to be torn now because I was thinking that I would do the first one as the next analysis. Even though I've seen it once, I was so impressed, and I thought, oh my gosh, I want to go back and do a deep dive on this and talk about, like, go back and see all the moments, talk about what makes them awesome. But now, I don't know, maybe we'll try In the Eye. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm going to be torn.
Yeah, whatever you choose to do, I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Well, I have just a few patron questions here. I know I want to make sure your time is respected, right? It's amazing. I love it when time flies when we're talking like this. It's so good.
So good.
Okay. So this is from Arnout. Naderpelps is his name. And he says, Alissa, as a beautiful woman, you probably experienced many crude comments from bad men or jealous comments from women. I love this. It goes somewhere beautiful and so nerdy. I just get so excited. With your level of mastery, have you ever been tempted to use your harsh vocals as a real-life thaumaturgy spell from D&D 5th edition to scare them off?
Oh, man, I wish I knew what that was.
Oh, man.
Oh, I don't know what that is, but it sounds like I should do it. I don't know.
it's a fun spell. Just imagine like if your harsh vocals were a spell from a really cool board game where you were role playing like a magician. What would they look like?
To think that they are my superpower. Actually, we just we released a character in Iron Maiden's Legacy of the Beast video game, and we had this character that we developed that like kind of looks like me, and it's this archenemy based character called Queen Beast, and she has that. She screams, and that's the attack on the enemy. So. Yeah, I mean, you know what's funny? It's a great question, and to be honest, the thing is, those kinds of comments and people don't actually rear their ugly heads in person. In person, everyone is like, it's, I think that what I've seen, especially now, but also just for years now, since social media started becoming a thing, but especially now since the pandemic, since every single topic is so divisive, what I've noticed, and I encourage everyone to be cautious of, including myself, is be aware of the bubble that the algorithm is making for you. Because you may be in a bubble of a very small minority of people that are convinced of one thing, but reality is totally different.
Yes.
So like, I have to say, in person, we have amazing shows. I don't get heckled. I don't have people saying anything rude to me, or if they are, I don't hear it. I mean, I've had that in the past for sure. That's something that's just normal, like to experience sometimes. But when it comes down to it, a lot of the like keyboard warriors are just exactly that. And so it takes like a special kind of person, I think, to actually like harass someone face to face.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people that do that online are not actually the kind of people that will do it in person.
I agree.
So I would just say like, take, and like pertaining to me, pertaining to other celebrities or public figures, also pertaining to yourself, because everybody's a target, you know what I mean? So if somebody says something bad about you online, like just always consider the source, like you don't know that person. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know what kind of a day they've had. What they're saying is not true. So, you can't really control it. And what they think or said is kind of none of your business because it's not true anyways. So, that's
Beautifully put.
yeah, that's the advice I would give relating to that.
It's good. Digibirder asks, which came first for you, metal music or fantasy fiction fandom? Secondly, are there any older bands that delved into fantasy subjects that you are fans of or who influenced you at all to begin with? And he said I could pick either both or, just one of those questions, but I decided to throw them both at you.
So what were the choices? Metal music
or fantasy fiction fandom?
I hope that this isn't blasphemous, but I don't think I am like a part of fantasy fandom. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Am I?
I see that in your costumes. It feels like you have like a.
I don't know. I don't.
No. It sounds like the visual arts came first for you, right?
Yes. Visual arts did come first. In terms of like fantasy fiction fandom, I'm not in that world actually. Like I don't know what it's referring to actually. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I don't know what it's referring to. So I think that's super cool. Maybe recommend
after visual.
So like a book or like maybe recommend a book that I should start with. I don't know.
Oh, well, fantasy fiction. I mean, like it could be even within metal, like the fantasy side of it, like the demons or fairies or stories like Lord of the Rings, right? That's
okay.
Also, I feel like they're connected.
I've read Lord of the Rings, but it doesn't influence me. Maybe I should, I don't know. I should probably get into some sort of fantasy book and escape reality for a while. But yeah, to answer the question, the visual side came first. I was already making clothes and painting and getting into like hair color and body modification.
I love your
and
hair
stuff.
color so
Thank
much.
you. I was already getting into that like when way before I started singing. So yeah, I guess like I have an appreciation for visuals. I love theater. I was actually the scenographist, like the, how do you say that in English? Like a scene designer, like set designer.
Set designer. There you go.
Yeah, for theater for many, many years. So I would construct and paint and organize the flow of scenes for different like local theater groups and different plays. So I love that. I love creating that world. I love the costumes that go into it, the lighting. Like I love theater. And so I guess that's where it comes from. It's not fantasy fiction. It's theater, actually. And I still love going to see Broadway shows in New York. And I love theater. I love musical theater. I could recite Jesus Christ Superstar to you right now from top to bottom. Like I love musical theater, and I see what we do on stage as just a form of that. We're telling stories through songs, and I want to give something interesting to look at as well.
I love that answer so much. Thank you. Robert Burns says, your outfits have always been amazing. One of my favorites being the Demon Queen outfit from Demons Are a Girl's Best Friend with Powerwolf. What goes into the creation of your outfits, and do you have a favorite of them?
Oh, man. To be honest, outfit choice is one of the things that stresses me out the most. But it's like a love-hate relationship because I don't know what my style is. I just know if I like something or if I don't. And it has to be equal parts unique, original, comfortable, functional, and fashionable. So for me, it's like there's so many things that go into it. Like we were saying about corsets, like they look great, but the function's not there, so it's not going to work for me. Like the Demon Queen outfit in the music video looks cool, would never work on stage. Like, I mean, if I just to break the illusion here, just to go through doorways, I had to turn sideways and then crab walk through the door because I didn't fit through doorways. So there's certain things that work for different environments. So basically, essentially what it comes down to is, I have a limited color palette because of my hair, so it has to be something that doesn't clash with blue. And it also has to basically not be blue because that would be just too monochromatic for me.
Wow.
So I have a pretty limited color palette, and it usually ends up being just neutrals or earth tones like grays, whites, blacks.
I just keep thinking about the Eagle Flies Alone, that particular outfit, and the way that it was grayish, but then you had the strips coming down from it that looked like they were your wings or your feathers emerging out. It looked like so much fun.
Yeah, that outfit was fantastic. I actually wrote lyrics to the song on those little strips. So if you look extremely closely at like some live photos, there's the lyrics to the song on those strips. Yeah,
so cool.
and so I wrote it like I painted it on with like a textured paint. And so that's actually a great example. That outfit, it worked super well with my choice of like hair color and the environment that we were in. But then when it came time to perform live, the bodysuit itself actually, it was paint. It was like thick with paint. And so it wouldn't have worked live because it was like stiff almost, you know what I mean? And so live, the cat suit didn't work, but the jacket did. And so that's why I wore that jacket live, but I had a different cat suit with it. So again, it's like, it needs to check all those boxes. And for a music video, that was fine, but live, that would not have worked. So,
do you have a favorite? Is there
a favorite outfit?
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know if I have a favorite because I really love all of them, and
that's a good answer.
I can't even part with them. You know, I should like auction them off or something, but there's so many memories attached to them. I'm not a collector. I don't like keeping material things, but I will say that my outfits are one thing that I think would be really difficult to part with, just because I see them and I remember the shows I did and videos I did, and it's, you know, they're like imbued with like all these memories. So I don't think I have a favorite yet. Yeah.
Wow. I agree. They're all amazing. I have two more questions for you. Okay.
Yes.
Quirky Uncle Dave wants to know, before hearing your music, I first learned of you through your conversation with Flor Jansen in the autumn of 2020. It made me happy to hear you talk about activism in terms of presenting people with options and hope instead of statistics and negativity. How do you feel this approach translates into your music? And also a quick follow-up from the same conversation. Were you ever successful at growing your own raspberries?
Oh my God. That's so cool. That's great to hear that Flor Finds, which is Flor's kind of podcast that I did, was able to introduce someone to Arch Enemy. So awesome. Thank you, Flor. Thank you to your patron for that. No, I was never able to grow my own raspberries. I tried really hard. I had a good looking raspberry bush, but it never yielded any fruit because I believe raspberries only yield every 2 years. And living in basically the land of the ice and snow doesn't really lend itself to having a very productive garden. So that, unfortunately, no. But yes, activism is something that's super important to me. Like I said, I'm vegan. I love animals. I don't want animals to be exploited or killed. And they are exploited and killed on a massive scale for food. And we've evolved to a point that we don't need to do that anymore. The thing is, I also have a pretty good understanding of human beings. Like I said, I'm fascinated by humans and how the brain works. I encounter a lot of people. You know, I meet people, like tons of people all the time on tour. So I'm by no means an expert, but I've seen a lot of different kinds of personalities, and I've worked with different kinds of personalities, and I know that people won't necessarily react in a positive way if they feel that they're being judged or that they're being told what to do.
Yes.
And for me personally, I don't really care what anyone does. I just don't want animals to die. You know what I mean? So if like, that's what I've always said. Like, if you're doing something that doesn't hurt anyone, including yourself, then do whatever you want. But in the case of, you know, consuming and eating animals, it does hurt the animals. So that's why I feel it's important to continue to talk about it. But I also know that, I would say 99% of the people who like follow what I do are there because they know my music. They're not really there for that reason. And so I just want to present to people, like, I'm sure a lot of people know about this by now, but I want to present to people that, hey, you can be really fit and strong and do a physically demanding job while not eating animals. You can
It's possible.
sound like this and be powerful without hurting animals. You can actually do that. And then if people don't want to hear about it, well, they don't have to. I'm like, they can just not read that post or whatever it might be. And if they do want to hear about it, then at least they have someone that they can actually turn to, and I can direct them to other sources. I mean, it's so easy to get resources now. There's so many documentaries on Netflix, and there's so many like Instagram pages you can follow with tons of great information. There's so much now that it's quite easy. But I think, I wouldn't feel right about myself if I didn't at least do something to try to help animals in that sense. And I also have seen like firsthand a lot of people write to me and be like, hey, I'm vegan now because of you, or I went vegan, 2 years ago because of you. And so that tells me like that, okay, so it's not a waste of time. Like there is something good happening, So I think there's a lot of different kinds of activism in the world, and they're all effective to some people. There's no one kind that will be effective for everyone, but all of them are effective to some groups of people. So I think it's important to have lots of different types of activism out there.
That's awesome. All right, last question from Pointless Discussion. You have an amazing talent singing both clean and harsh vocals. Which of the two sorts of singing do you enjoy performing live the most? And which one is the most difficult to switch into during a live performance? I love that question.
Yeah. So I think that like a myth that I will now bust is that it's difficult to switch, because it's, for me anyways, it's super easy to switch. I can switch in the same syllable. Like switching is not a problem. Switching is actually easier than doing one thing the whole time. For me personally, if I do both techniques, it's almost like one gets a little break while the other one's going.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense, but that's how it feels. And it
makes perfect sense, actually. Just physically, like which ones are engaging. It's like you don't want to just work out this muscle, you want to work out this muscle too.
Exactly. So for me, it's actually easier to do both. It's more difficult to do just one consistently. I will say that I've never done a show of just clean singing. I've never done a complete show where it was only clean singing. I've done plenty of shows where it was maybe 50 or 60% clean singing, or I've done shows like guest appearances where I'm up for 2 or 3 songs and it's all clean singing. But I've never done like a full 90-minute set list of just clean singing, which is really weird to think about now that I say that, actually.
Right.
But I like both. I will say the clean singing, it's like, okay, if I can, with the screaming, it's more like this like hill. And it's like, if you can get up here with your monitor mix and you're healthy, you're pretty much good to go. Like, even if the sound's a bit off, like you're going to stay on top and it's going to be a good show. But the clean singing is more like this. So it's like, if I can't hear, it's going down. If I'm sick, it's going down. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit more finicky.
Yeah.
It's also extremely satisfying when I get like a really good monitor mix and I can hear exactly what I'm doing and it just flows out and I'm not pushing and I'm not guessing. That's like a really satisfying feeling, to just throw the voice to the opposite wall and just feel like it's like a very powerful feeling. So I will say that maybe the clean singing is like a little bit more satisfying, but at the same time, it could just be that like scarcity is creating demand because I don't do it as much. So yeah, it could really be that.
Oh man. I feel like I could ask you at least 100 more questions about the vocal technique side, especially, but I know our time has come to an end. So please tell everybody, how can we support you the most? Where can we find your music? And where can we buy Deceivers when it comes out on August 12th?
Yes. Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for having me. It was a great conversation. We should definitely do it again. And if you would like to hear me sing, you can do that in Arch Enemy, and at any Arch Enemy concert. We have a whole bunch lined up, so you can go to any of our socials or archenemy.net, and our tour dates are all lined up there. Deceivers is our newest album, which is coming out on August 12th. So you can pre-order that, you can stream it, you can buy it. That would be amazing if you would buy like a physical copy. We have a lot of really cool collector's editions out there, just because we know that some people really do love to buy that physical copy. So we do have that coming up. We have 5 singles from Deceivers, which are all on our YouTube channel, so you can go watch all those music videos. And then for me personally, a great way to support me, if you do like what I do, is to join my Patreon page, which is just my name. Just search the name on Patreon. And there I release a new song every season with exclusive merch that I commission a design for based on the lyrics of that song. And there's a lot more on there too. I do live streams. I have other songs on there, poetry, photography, all sorts of stuff. So, and that's a great way to support me if you choose. If not, you can also just listen to our music, and that's a great way to support us too.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Alissa. It's been wonderful getting to talk with you, and I hope I get to talk with you again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Cheers to you.
Cheers.